Arnold Schwarzenegger is considered by many to be the best bodybuilder of all time. However, bodybuilding has continued to evolve since Schwarzenegger's career. So could Chris Bumstead, who has dominated the classic physique division for years and will now compete in the men's open division, win a bodybuilding contest against Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime? That's exactly what we're going to tell you in this video. So watch it to the end and learn all about a fictional bodybuilding duel between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Chris Bumstead and which of the two would win it. First things first, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a professional bodybuilder in the 1970s, whereas Chris Bumstead is nowadays. Of course, this also means that Chris Bumstead has many decades of knowledge about training, nutrition, and steroids ahead of Arnold Schwarzenegger. On the other hand, Arnold Schwarzenegger's successes at the time make him arguably the best bodybuilder of all time. But would that be enough to beat the arguably most aesthetically pleasing bodybuilder of our time, Chris Bumstead, these days? Let's just take a look at it pose by pose. If we compare the front double biceps pose of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Chris Bumstead, it is immediately noticeable that Arnold Schwarzenegger simply has a much more massive biceps. On the other hand, Chris Bumstead has a much slimmer waist, which in turn makes his upper body look better by bodybuilding standards. But what is even more obvious is that Chris Bumstead simply has significantly more muscular legs than Arnold Schwarzenegger had in his prime. This is especially evident in this pose. We continue with the side chest pose, and here too, the difference between the legs of the two athletes is immediately visible. It becomes clear as far as the legs are concerned, Arnold Schwarzenegger couldn't come close to competing with the best bodybuilders nowadays. Of course, if Arnold Schwarzenegger were young again today and had the same premises as current bodybuilders, then his legs would certainly be much more brutal and the whole situation would probably be different again. Chris Bumstead also looks more aesthetic in terms of his upper body, but this is mainly due to the fact that he has an even lower body fat percentage than Arnold Schwarzenegger used to have. Outside of bodybuilding competitions, this is more or less irrelevant. But in competitions, a very low body fat percentage naturally ensures even better definition and thus more points from the judges. In the back double biceps pose also shows a similar picture. Arnold Schwarzenegger may have had better calves than Chris Bumstead, but Chris Bumstead is a bit more impressive everywhere else. Although Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, also had a very shredded back and awesome arms. In the abdominal and thigh pose, Chris Bumstead outperforms his opponent Arnold Schwarzenegger by miles. Once again, this is primarily due to his considerably better legs, whereas Chris Bumstead also simply has more definition in his upper body with a similar muscle mass. And with Arnold's best pose, for which he is known internationally, here it has to be said, Chris Bumstead again has the edge when it comes to the legs. But when it comes to the upper body, Arnold Schwarzenegger can score here, which has a lot to do with his insanely massive arms. Although Chris Bumstead would clearly win a competition with prime Arnold Schwarzenegger nowadays, but that also has to do with the fact that there is so much more knowledge about training, nutrition, and steroids nowadays that Arnold Schwarzenegger simply didn't have back then. If Arnold Schwarzenegger were about the same age as Chris Bumstead today, and therefore had access to similar scientific knowledge on the topics of training and diet, as well as performance-enhancing substances, he would certainly have a very good chance against Chris Bumstead. And by the way, also the best bodybuilders in the men's open class, such as Hadi Choopan, Derek Lunsford, and Nick Walker. Be that as it may, one thing is certain. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the most influential bodybuilder in history, and Chris Bumstead is the most aesthetic bodybuilder of all time. And that is certainly both incredibly awesome. That's it again for today. If you liked the video, share it with your friends.